All right, so hello everyone. We are here on a very unique type of stream. We have Matt Money from Palantir Weekly, who's you guys know, and then we have Carlos, or the Growth Stock Wizard, and Simon. These are two of my Twitter followers, viewers of the channel, and they decided to hop on this podcast today, basically discussing Rocket Labs. Very interesting company. Been hearing a lot about it for many months now. In my head, the basic understanding I have of them is that they are a SpaceX mini competitor / alternative, and eventually can be pretty big as a company as the overall commercial space environment increases. But that is all that I know about them. So I'm very open to listening and hearing a lot of different perspectives from everyone here today. So I guess let's get started with this. I'm going to put the question out there, and anyone can tackle it, and then we'll go around the horn. Why is Rocket Labs an exciting company that is worth people paying attention to over the next 5 years?
I'd say Rocket Lab, not Labs, is just kidding.
Oops.
I'm just messing with you. I think the thing that's most exciting about it, and the reason why I initially got involved, and Simon and Carlos, feel free to chime in, but the thing that got me most excited was the second most launched vehicle through the United States. And the big difference between SpaceX and Rocket Lab is SpaceX is really trying interplanetary and more medium to large launch vehicles, where Rocket Lab noticed a true niche, which was really small launch, so only 320 kilograms. And now they're starting to also access kind of the medium launch as well with their Neutron product. But the thing that's been most exciting since de-SPAC for Rocket Lab, which I think happened at the end of 21 or early 22, was that they've not necessarily just entered into launch and done that very successfully. They've also looked at space systems. And the thing that has kind of transitioned since I originally invested in the company when it was Vector Acquisition Group was it went from, hey, we want to be a dominant space launch company, to now they want everything that's in space to have a Rocket Lab logo on it. Whether that's through solar panels, whether that's through satellites, whether that's through small launch vehicle. So it's really transitioned to not necessarily just what a competitor from a launch standpoint for SpaceX, but anything and everything within space should have a Rocket Lab logo on it. And I think it was something like, I forget, you guys can correct me, and then I'll hand it over to you guys. It was like 40 or 60% of the things that were launched last year in 2022 had a Rocket Lab logo on it. But I'll look in the investor presentation if I could find it.
I mean, I think it's going to be really helpful if we take a quick step back. I think the space economy just as a whole can be a little bit more confusing, something new for a lot of people. And it's like, it's a very B2B business as well. So a couple fundamentals, I think.
Second picture I sent you. There you go. Cool. Yeah. So just real quick, right? So when we talk about space, we're usually talking about three different things. We're talking about launch, space systems, like Matt said, and the applications, right? So when you think about launch, orbits are like, so you've got a lot of different orbits, and each of the orbits have their different application. They have a different shape, and they depends on the different mission profile that the mission has, right? So if we just kind of go one by one real quick, we can see that the Kármán line is at 100 kilometers. So that's pretty much like not space yet, but that's what space tourism calls space, just to try to get people to pay pretty bucks for it, right? So that's where kind of Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin were kind of operating.
But like regular commercial flights wouldn't be at the Kármán line, right?
No, regular commercial would be
nowhere near
33,000 feet, right? So about 10 clicks. Yeah, cool.
Okay.
So then we got LEO, low Earth orbit, and that's kind of what the majority of kind of space is kind of played at. That's kind of gives you a nice ground of low latency communication connectivity. So when you think of like Starlink, when you think of even the ISS is around 300, 400 kilometers in altitude. And it's also really helpful for like observation, remote sensing, right? Medium Earth orbit, you're getting a little bit further out. So that's kind of the big middle ground you see there. That's kind of where GPS is, kind of mobile communication, all that good stuff. And you got GEO. So GEO is really interesting because it's following the orbit speed of the rotation of the Earth, right? So then the satellite exists right above one coordinates on the Earth, and it kind of moves at the same velocity relative to those coordinates, right? And that for that use case, that's more like when you think of like weather monitoring, where you have a satellite that just wants to focus on a very specific location on Earth, or if you've got something like broadcast TV or whatnot, right? And then you got these more like different special use case orbits. So there was like the sun synchronous orbit, which goes over the polar regions of the world. And then what happens is it's in sync with the sun. So it goes over the same place every single day at the same time of day, according where the sun is shining on the earth. So that's really helpful for like imaging if you're trying to capture the same the same place with the same light every single day. And then you got these really niche cases, the near rectilinear halo orbit, and that's something we're going to get to later when we talk about the Capstone's mission. The reason I'm bringing this up is because each of these orbits have different use cases. They have different constellations, so collections of different satellites with different use cases, right? So if we just take like medium or low Earth orbit, right, and then we take imagery for a second, imagery can even be split into like multiple categories. So you've got like low pixel density imagery, you got high pixel density imagery, you've got radio imagery. So just low pixel density would be like Planet Lab. So their constellation gets a pixel density of 1 feet. So that when they take a picture from the orbit, every single pixel is according to 30 centimeters on Earth. Or high pixel density would be something like Google Maps uses, right? So they each have the different use case. Planet Labs is a wider constellation because it's more about getting the real time, versus Google Maps doesn't really need that real time thing, right? And the other radio imagery is more about how do you take that imagery at the poles where there's maybe different weather conditions and whatnot. You need to kind of see through clouds and whatnot. Again, the reason I'm bringing this up, there's a lot of different constellations up there. There's a lot of different needs. And these satellites are becoming more, they're operating iteratively. So every 2-3 years, you're seeing new satellites go online and the old ones are deorbiting. So it's like, it's not like you're sending something up to the space and it's just constantly changing, right? So I don't know if you guys have any notes about that.
And so your core point is that because there's so many different areas in which satellites will be needed, whether it's higher or lower, one potential bull case just for the entire industry is that there's going to need to be a company that can fit the diversity of the use cases of commercializing space.
The reason this is important, that's what we're going to get into, is SpaceX is the leader in the game right now, right? But what happens is SpaceX gives a delivery of, I think, right now it's for $67 million, they're getting 22,800 kilograms to orbit, versus Rocket Lab gets mere 300 kilograms. So if you put up the other slide I sent you on the group chat, cool. No, the other one. Yeah, awesome. So that's kind of that's the total addressable market right now for just launch, right? So we're just talking about launch. So the 2022 there, that kind of gives you, so the bottom bar, that's the small satellites, medium satellites, heavy satellites, and super heavy satellites. That's a 22 TAM today. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the TAM over time from 22, 25, and 2030.
That's
So
a $9 billion TAM, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Sorry, today we're, so again, the reason this is important is because a lot of these satellites, they're usually, right now, Rocket Lab plays on the small satellites up to medium satellite. Sorry, just small satellite at the moment. But then when we're going to talk about the next vehicle, Neutron, that's actually going to address 90% of all the satellites going to orbit. So the reason I'm saying this, again, is SpaceX, they're targeting like either really big satellites or they're having a rideshare program where a lot of these companies are just kind of dumping their satellites. But as soon as you have a niche case for a unique orbit, if it's a unique mission profile, if you're caring about mission timeline, if you're trying to get responsive space, so getting something out of space really quickly on your own timeline. So that's kind of where the value add for Rocket Lab is today. They're not going to compete with SpaceX on a cost basis. They're not going to compete with SpaceX, just on a cost basis. But everything else, Rocket Lab does really well.
Okay, Carlos, your thoughts on why Rocket Lab is super interesting?
Yeah. So kind of, I have a few different things. The first one, kind of want to go into that satellite conversation. Let me send you a picture. You can view on that. So this is from 2022, second quarter. They have a thing where they want to do debris removal. So this is like what Simon was talking about, satellites in the LEO orbit. Basically, this is going to be like future here, but I believe they can become the waste management of satellites, right? So they're going to have heavy cash flow picking up these satellites. putting them down, putting them up, getting contracts from different organizations that'll have satellites from AST, Space Mobile.
Who's doing waste removal right
Starlink.
now in the sky?
ROCKETLAB is the only company right now that actually cares about moving space junk. I
Debris
don't.
removal, yeah.
So they have a photon platform. We'll get into that in a bit, hopefully, which actually deorbits their platform or their satellite platform when the use case is over, right? So typically, the industry really wasn't focused on. Well, they didn't really have a kind of a strategy for space junk. What happens is over time, shit just slowly starts deorbiting. But as soon as you end up in the higher orbits like the MEO and the GEO, then either you're just trying to send it off to space, or most of the time it's just space junk.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is, it's one of the many use cases actually.
Yeah, and that got me very interested in it. Another thing is, I'm not sure about the percentage, but it's a pretty high percentage. We're talking about like maybe 60, 70% of the revenue is actually from space systems. So even though they're called ROCKETLAB, most of the money is from space systems, like Matt was saying in the beginning. So that's a pretty great thing, because you don't rely as much as the launches to make that revenue. They're aiming for 24 launches this year. They recently had a back-to-back in less than 15 days in New Zealand, and I believe it's in Virginia. So they're very diverse, you know. It's similar to Palantir. I know you'll love this. So like around 50% is commercial launch provider services and stuff like that. 30% is defense. 20% is civil. I'll send you the link. I'll send you a picture here. But yeah, they're pretty diverse in like different aspects, right? So it's not just government. It's not just commercial launches. They kind of, you know, they're very broad with that. You know, from NASA and all those Black Sky, all those companies there. Another thing is they're 100% mission success right now. So, you know, knock on wood, they haven't failed yet.
We're going 90% at the moment.
Oh, they're 90%?
Yeah, so they had three failures, one 2017, one in 2020, one in 2021. So the revenue kind of dipped in 21 after that mission went bad. I think that was a Canon payload, unfortunately. But what's interesting is pretty much in the space sector, there's a lot of competition out there, right? And you kind of hear of all these new rocket companies with really big missions, or visions, I mean, and just trying to get to orbit. So getting to orbit is apparently, according to Peter Beck, the founder, the easy part. It's more about being able to maintain a rocket company. So it's actually sort of healthy that a company actually undergoes a failure, because then that just ends up that they build a much more robust system.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, even when you look at a 90% success rate since, and 100% success rate since that failure in 2021. And I think, yeah, it averages up at about a 90. But over time, I mean, I think even SpaceX, it took them a while to get that number over 90%.
Okay.
So it's just kind of part of the journey, right? You just accept it. So earlier when we talked about launch, kind of what Carlos is going into now is like the space system side of the business, right? So we identified that launch was about a $10 to $20 billion TAM. Space system is actually already a $20 billion TAM. So when you think about space systems, it's like a satellite it's kind of designed in two different subsystems, right? So you got the bus. The bus is kind of the structure of the onboard computer, the orientation, the telemetry, the power system, the communication. You got the mission stuff. That's mission-specific sensors or payload. So the payload could be something like what Carlos was talking about, where you have the deorbiting of the waste, or you've got these other missions going up that are going to be 3D printing with, let me get the name, that's going to be a Varda manufacturing in space. So they're going to be 3D printing different things in space. I don't think it's bio, but I think it's something to do with fiber. So that's really exciting. So that's the space system side of things. So launch, ROCKETLAB has currently the one Electron rocket, which is 300 kg to orbit. So about a $25,000 kg to LEO, $25,000 kg per LEO. The new Neutron that's going to come online, that's about $4,000 per kilogram to LEO. So that's still under Falcon 9. So But when Falcon 9 launched, they initially had a 9,500 kilograms, and now they're all the way up to 23. So SpaceX have reduced the cost by $30 million and 3x the payload capacity since their launch of the Falcon 9. So Neutron, I'm expecting similar numbers, maybe not a 3x, maybe not a minus 30%, but we're going to kind of see similar numbers as that. So that's kind of the launch business. When you go to the space system business, you have a platform that's called Photon. So when I was saying the satellite is divided between the bus and the mission, Photon is the bus. So it's like saying that instead of, it's like saying that you buy, let's say when you buy a car, you want to be able to just customize the colors, maybe the material, the engine, whatever. But then you have maybe the same chassis, the same wheels, the same whatever, right? So Rocket Lab kind of provides you that infrastructure to kind of build whatever edits, whatever final things you need for your mission specific payload, but everything that that you need under one roof to get something in orbit and make it work in orbit. Yeah, that's the Photon platform. And they accomplished that by an acquisition strategy they did post-SPAC. So when they SPAC, they used most of the money to acquire 5 different companies. So one of them was Solero. Solero is one of the 2 solar space companies, so solar panels for space in the US, and the most efficient at 33%, whereas the other one is under 30. So they're the number 1 solar panel for space in the world, or in the US, but technically in the world.
And,
they also,
and to put that in perspective, like First Solar, they just released their Series 6 solar panel, and that's on that's basically ground perspective, fully, what goes out to sale for these big solar projects that you're seeing across the globe, and those are 19% effective. Yeah. So we're talking about 19 to 33%. That's a huge jump, and not only that, but it's 40% lighter than the majority of the solar panels that are out there for space systems specifically.
They're selling solar panels to things that are in the sky so that they can get energy.
Think about the rovers on Mars.
Okay.
These things need power, right? You either send very heavy batteries that weigh things down. That means you have the ability to send less equipment, less satellites, less whatever into space, or you have these extremely efficient solar panels that have the ability to provide power instead.
Wow.
More efficient, smaller batteries, less ways, more to orbit. Right.
Okay, so Matt, let's start with you. Talk to me about the stock. If you had to convince me that this is not speculative, how would you convince me of that from a valuation perspective, growth potential? I mean, how would you get someone to feel like, you know what, I can put 10,000 here and forget about it in 5 years and maybe I get 50.
For sure. So I'd say the small satellite space, and if you're really curious, you wouldn't hear it from the horse's mouth. I think Peter Beck and I forget the other gentleman's names, something Spice. They did a really good job talking about it in the 4Q, or sorry, yeah, it was the 4Q call just in February. But the small satellite launch specifically arena is rather small. Virgin Orbit just laid off 85% of their folks and might not launch another. That was one of the folks that it's in small sat. Astra is they have $100 million left in cash, and they're burning about $50 million a quarter. Relativity, they're well-ish capitalized. They just got their first launch compared to the 35th launch that Rocket Lab
which didn't go to orbit.
It did not go to orbit. Yes, thank you. The second phase failed, or second stage failed, if I remember, for Relativity.
Yeah. So the initial and the second failed. The MECO was fine, but then the second age cut off quite early.
And then I don't know where Firefly is at, if they've actually had a successful launch or not. So maybe you could help.
They have, but they've been kind of a little radio silent. I think we're expecting another launch from them in the next 2-3 months, though.
Okay. So to finish where I'm kind of at, Rocket Lab has about 400 or 450 million in cash on hand as of year end 2022. And they're burning about 110 to 120 million. They need about 150 or so million more to finish Neutron. So it gives them a runway of about 2 to 3 years left versus some of these other smaller players that have either dropped out or are about to drop out within year end 2023. And so I anticipate a lot of the backlog associated with those, which the backlog for Rocket Lab as of year end 2022 is already over $500 some million.
And it's up to
is
about
going
Those
to
are
be.
government
now.
contracts.
What's that?
Those are government. The backlog, or those are all
Simon, go
commercial?
ahead. You were trying to chime in.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the backlog is up to 750 now. It hasn't been announced yet, but Wired TechCrunch, they had a deep dive. So there's a new contract that's worth about 250 mil, and that's of Space System. So the backlog right now is in launch. You got 25 by Speculative, 30 million, about 140 for launch, and about 500 for Space Systems.
Very good. And the last thing I'll highlight before I hand it to the rest of the squad is they have missions they've already assisted with missions going to the moon with NASA. They'll have another one going to Venus in the few years, which will be the first, I think, one of the first, if not the first, systems to actually go towards Venus. And then
First
you have
manned
another
missions,
Mars mission as well. So well capitalized in, I guess you could say, in the arena compared to others. They've had a lot of success already in small launch. They're boosting up their satellite systems business, which I think will eventually do really, really well. And what else is there? Huge future and backlog. I mean, comparatively to the rest of the opportunities that are on and are publicly traded, I think it's the best opportunity that you can have.
If you could just pull up my, I sent you something on Twitter. Yeah, so that's my personal model at the moment. So there's a huge aggregation of all the data on the backlog and the back end of the system. But essentially right now we've got, we're gross profitable. Launch is minus 7 million gross, but Space Systems kind of covering over for launch. So gross profitable, that's great. I've got us becoming operationally profitable in 2026, right? So in the revenue, we've got Neutron only being introduced in 2025. So I'm actually quite conservative. I don't, if you guys follow Dave G, it's a little bit more conservative than his model actually. Cost of goods sold. Again, that goes through all the margin. I'm factoring reusability very conservatively. And then the gross margin, yeah, that's the interesting part here. And the operating system, the OPEX here, it's actually going relatively less than what we've seen in the last couple of years. So anyhow, I've got them going out. I don't know if Matt maybe or Carlos, who got some advice, or maybe your models might be differing a little bit for this, but I do have them going, operationally profitable by 2026.
What is the stock price look like in
mil.
2028?
At the current multiple, you're talking about $25. To your,
and right now it's 5, right?
Right now it's 3.9. Yeah, 4.
4.
Yeah. So yeah.
And is this your biggest position, Simon?
Yes.
So how long have you been in the stock and studying them?
I've got a cost average of 4.7 right now.
Okay, so you've been in there for a year, diving deep into them, making your models.
Yeah, and I've been buying whenever it's under 4, I keep buying.
Now, so I guess educate me on this. If one could argue it is speculative just by the sheer nature of space being speculative, why not make Tesla, Google, something else a large position? Why Rocket Labs as like the largest of the port?
So for me, it kind of goes, there's a huge convergence, right? So even on your last live, you guys were talking about how the space race 2.0, satellites is the future, everything's kind of going on edge, right? So for me, it's just kind of, I've been a fanatic in space and astronomy for as long as I can remember. Space race 2.0 for me is happening. One, we have to compete with China. 2, we're seeing a huge infrastructure play right now on the moon. And I just mean like SpaceX is currently valued at $160 billion. And I get to buy something that is closely runner-up in the launch that is doing space system better than SpaceX is doing for 1% of the market cap of SpaceX. As soon as they get their new rocket online, that rocket is arguably better than the Falcon 9. Actually, not arguably, it is better than the Falcon 9. When their Starship comes online, that's not going to be able to address 100% of the market. So for me, it's just launch is going to work. It's going to take time to be able to be operationally profitable with it. We're kind of reliant on Neutron for it. But I think one thing is I don't think I would have a large position, if at all, if Rocket Lab was purely a launch business. Right? So if at all, right? Space system is the backbone of, and what's going to bring them up to that $1 billion revenue a year.
And when you
Right,
mean
but
space
then-
systems, you mean like the internet, the ISS, the International Space System?
No,
up in
so
the
I'm talking
sky?
about the photon. So remember when I was talking about the satellite and the bus system? So
Yeah.
that bus is kind of the photon. That's what space system is. Space system is their photon, the configurable spacecraft, and then they have all the components of like the solar panels, star trackers, reaction wheels, separation systems, flight computers, radios. So that's the space system. Right now, that's about 3 times bigger than the launch business already. And kind of if you look at the model, I could send you some more stuff, but launch right now is going to slowly kind of catch up to space systems, and in a couple of years kind of overtake it. But right now, space system is what's going to lead us to profitability, and that's kind of what becomes less of a risky play as well, right? A lot of these
Right.
companies they acquired with their SPAC money, they've got years and if not decades of experience, right? That Solero company, they've been operating for 20, 25 years, I think. Same thing for St. Clair, right? They've got a huge heritage in the business, and for me, it's like it's not a winner take all market. It's not going to become a monopoly. They have this edge case for satellites that need specific orbits at a specific time, and that's their clientele. Space system is going to just be able to like I think Matt said at the beginning of the chat. ROCKETLAB is going to have a logo and everything that goes up to space, and that's through their space systems company, right? Or pillar of the company.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to highlight, I sent in Twitter, which Amit is now kindly bringing up. This is kind of my current launch cadence for how many I think. So to give people an idea as to what it's like, there's been about 35 successful launches, 3 this quarter. Well, I guess in the first quarter. Now that we're in the second quarter. So my anticipation is we'll kind of be at 24 this year, just like you said, Simon. So it doesn't differ at all.
It's going to be 12 to 15 this year. They're projecting for 15. Yeah, they're projecting for 15. But yeah, I've kind of put it at 12. The thing is, launch is really lumpy, and ROCKETLAB can do 24, no problem.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of getting the clients to, at the same pace, right?
Yeah, I think so. There's 3 launch pads. So there's 2, or maybe there's 4, but I know there's 2 in New Zealand, and there's 1 in Wallops in
Yeah.
Virginia, which I think is pretty interesting. And then if you go to, I have very similar numbers that you kind of had, Simon. If you go to the revenue, I anticipate revenue kind of climbing to the 2 to 2.5 billion by the end of the decade. I think with that, if you go to the next one, I have it split by space systems. So this is kind of just looking in terms of growth, what it kind of looks like. I don't know if
you've got launch catching up really quickly compared to me.
Yeah, I don't know if I did this on my own or if I got these numbers from the investor presentation or what have you. But
these kind of look like the numbers from their when they went when they first went public.
Is it okay? Yeah. I remember like doing some kind of deep dive from it for a couple hours, and this is kind of where I was kind of heading. And so I honestly think that I think 2025-ish, late 25, early 26. The only problem for profitability, I think the only problem is I don't know when a lot of the CapEx and OpEx is really going to get kicked off for Neutron. I know they're really trying to get it in 2025. Late 24 is the first launch, but I think if I remember correctly, Simon, and then 25, I think is when you're really going to start to establish some sort of cadence with it. So no? Or
yes, sort of. I mean, so the molds are done. So the Neutron's still going to be a carbon composite rocket, right? So the expensive thing of doing that is kind of building the shape of it or the structure of it, right? So the molds have been done. Archimedes is under test. We're soon going to start testing. I'm expecting Neutron to have a test flight 2024, and they're just going to take that hit of 30 mil. Then 2025, I'm expecting maybe at least 1 client, up to 3 that year, and then kind of slowly, gradually. The other thing, so I was much more conservative on the launch cadence than these models, but I did introduce space applications into the mix, I think in 26. So Amit, just real quick, so we kind of established what launch business is, right? So that's getting the payload to orbit. Space system, that's the bus. Space application is something like Starlink. Right? So you're providing internet, you're providing a service, you're providing data, you're providing something, right? Now, space apps has a TAM of $300 billion. So you're talking about 30x the TAM of just launch, or yeah, 10x the TAM of space systems plus launch together, right?
And Space
So
Apps is if SpaceX owns Starlink, then what exactly would Rocket Lab be providing? Would there be a competitor of an internet service, just like another company's satellites in space?
yeah, I mean, there's so many use cases, right? So early when I was talking about imagery, so you've got just like 5, 6, 7 different use cases for just imagery, right? So it's just like there's a lot of services that we haven't even thought of yet. So one of the arguments for their Venus mission was that the data that they're going to be capturing in Venus to pay for the launch is just going to be resold as a data service to universities or whatever, right? So you've got space apps is there's a lot that can be done, right? So you can talk about observation, you can talk imagery,
There's a
you
lot
get
in
remote sensing.
geomodeling, climate change research,
Yeah.
right? A lot of that type of stuff, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's really interesting. The next question that I was gonna ask that I had on the tip of my tongue before it disappeared. Oh yes. Are the rockets reusable like Falcon 9? How do they launch these rockets up?
Carlos, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So yeah, they're doing reusable. Right now, the rockets come down on the water and they're recovering it as a water recovery. They used to try to do a helicopter recovery, but basically they just said that it just makes more sense, less of a risk. And I think it's like more profitable or something like that. So they just decided to do water recovery.
I
So
actually
when
didn't think it was possible.
yeah. So yeah, and basically that's how they're kind of doing it. So they are reusing parts of the ship.
But the new rocket that's going to be coming online, Neutron, will be 100% fully reusable.
Yeah.
Reusable in the sense of it goes to the sky, and then like when I watch the SpaceX ones, it comes down like
Exactly.
naturally on a target. Like they're not there yet, but they're working towards that. That's what you're saying.
So the new rocket that's going to come online that we're talking about in 2024, that's going to be fully reusable, like a SpaceX rocket that kind of come back on the launch pad. The other thing you have to think about, reusability only accounts for about 1/3 of the rocket price. So when you think about the cost of launch, let's say a Falcon 9 or an Electron rocket, only 1/3 of the ticket price is actually the cost of building the structure of the rocket and the engines and whatnot. The other 2/3 is just operating the launch pad, operating the team, kind of the OpEx associated to that, right? So when you look about getting the price down, it's as much about reusability as it is about frequency. And that was kind of Astra, which is another kind of peer in the space. They were targeting kind of mass manufacturing approach to rockets, but they didn't really factor in reusability at all. In SpaceX, they really kind of targeted reusability, and frequency just kind of came over time. So Rocket Lab, it's kind of middle ground. They're targeting both frequency because they can build a rocket in 24 hours with their robot Rosie, and they also have reusability, where hopefully the Neutron rocket will be able to be reused multiple times, right? So get the price down. It's as much about frequency as it is about reusability.
And that's why I like Peter Beck, because he's able to adapt, right?
Is he the founder or the CEO or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Okay, is
And
he a guy like Karp or Anthony Noto? Elon, is he someone to bet on?
He has gray hair just like Karp, so you'll love him. I should pull up a picture of his hair.
I'll pull it up. But is he worth betting on? Can I trust this guy with my money?
Yes.
Self-taught rocket engineer that used to build rocket-powered bikes. Kind of very Elon Musk marketing to him, but just a very humble dude as well. Yeah, that's him.
He's pretty active on Twitter too.
Interesting. Okay. Where does AI and the exponential growth of AI play into a Rocket Lab's thesis? Is it relevant at all? Or we don't care about AI with Rocket Lab.
I mean, I think you can put AI in anything, really.
Yeah, but my question is, do they benefit from AI increasing? Like, do they get to capture any part of it?
Yeah, I think AI can help get the OpEx down, right? So right now to get a rocket up, I know there's about 20, 30 people that have to be the mission control, make sure all the systems are nominal and whatnot, right? So maybe from an OpEx point of view, also from just a mission structure, right? So now we're talking a lot about LEO and different kind of orbits around the Earth. For example, one of the missions that we did for NASA was so NASA has the Artemis program, which is about sending humans back to the moon. We're pretty much all familiar with that. So the first step of that mission is actually getting a new orbital space station around the moon. So ROCKETLAB sent, there you go, again, we see it. So that mission, that photon, that little satellite you see in the middle of Carlos's t-shirt, so that's the photon, that's the bus system, right? So for $7.5 million, NASA could actually send one of these, orbit it around the moon, and test near hello hectalar orbit that had never been tested before, right? And again, we're talking about quite complex maneuvers. So that orbit is really special because it goes around the poles of the moon, while obviously the moon is going and orbiting around us, while that orbit orbits the moon on the poles. So it's actually never leaving sight of the Earth. So that orbital station have constant data streams with the Earth. So in the past, for the Apollo missions, the modules were always going behind the Earth, and we're kind of losing communications for an hour or two, right? So Rocket Lab was the first company to ever test that orbit with NASA. So when it comes to AI, I mean, these are really, really complex stuff, right? And now we're going to be talking about going to Venus, going to the Mars. We're talking about doing flybys. We're talking about a lot of different mission profiles, right? So I think it's going to help to get the OpEx down over time. But apart from that, I mean, indirectly, we're going to see a lot of AI applied to the space apps side of things. So data processing, if you look at how the imagery is being done, right? So one of the clients that Rocket Lab has, called Planet Labs, their entire mission is to do a globally indexed image of the web every 45 minutes, right? So you're using, and that's all the space application side of things, right? So that's computer vision. That's just a lot of complex stuff there, right?
So basically, you just see this space. It's so obvious to you that it's growing and that the use cases of it were growing. 20 years ago, a company. What'd you say?
It has no choice but to do it, but to grow.
It has no choice but to do it.
And then if I can interject, think about what's happening now, right, with the shiny spy balloons and stuff like that, right? SpaceX can't do everything, right? We're gonna have those government contracts that will be relied on us too, because we have just so much, launch pads and ability to take a look at what's going on.
Right.
If the spy balloons keep coming, something's going to happen where space is going to be more valuable.
Okay. Matt, I'm sharing your picture.
Yeah. Yes, this is basically just the trajectory that Simon was kind of talking about with NASA, and the work that they're doing with the moon.
Wow.
So you can kind of see on the moon there how a photon is actually going around the orbits. Yeah, it just never leaves the side of the Earth. So I mean, that's just kind of one use case, right? But then even in the beginning of the conversation, when I was talking about all the different constellation programs, for me, it's just so obvious that we're going this direction. And there's a lot of convergence happening in the space as well. So the Verda mission, for example, that's going to be testing 3D manufacturing in space. One of the third-party clients for that as well is going to be bioprinting in a couple of years. Where you got stuff like, if you want to talk about the real use cases, today's use cases, I mean, we've got a contract for $143 million to design a new constellation for Globalstar, which Apple is the end consumer for. Right, so Apple announced the new Apple iOS 15 or whatever, the cellular the GPS calling.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately going to be Rocket Lab that's going to be providing the service for Apple to do that or to grow that service over time, over the next iOS updates, right? And Rocket Lab is at the end of the day the person that's going to be able to materialize that for Apple. So you're talking about buying a $2 billion company market cap that is testing orbits for NASA. That's helping Apple achieve the mission for GPS connectivity. That's testing 3D bioprinting. That's sending stuff to Venus. That is doing the space removal stuff, like Carlos was saying.
Why is it only $2 billion then?
Because we're about to live in the future. It's going to be completely transitory. It's a convergence at the moment. And I mean, people right now, they're scared about the cash on hand. They're scared about the revenue. And I think for really this future to kind of really materialize itself, one, we need to see the Neutron rocket go online. That's going to help compete with SpaceX on a cost basis. Once that happens, we're going to see a lot new missions profile. We're going to see and I think this space is going to move incredibly quick, because there's a lot of money right now going to infrastructure on the moon. There's a lot of money flowing to all these different systems, and China is at the same pace. So we have no choice but to go at the same speed, if not outpace them as much as we can.
And we're pretty much becoming very popular in terms of news, right? So like, I don't know if you guys remember the NASA DART mission where they basically helped, I don't know how to say it, but basically self-explode into incoming comet to advert it. That was, Rocket Lab helped with that, with the solar panels, getting that satellite to self-explode in that. You hear a lot about James Telescope, right? The Webb Telescope.
Yep.
Rocket Lab is into that. I sent you a link about a news article about that. The last launch, I believe it was around 20K YouTube live viewers. So, you know, it's not SpaceX numbers with the streaming, but it's becoming very popular with the amount of views that the live streams get.
Okay. Here's gonna be my final question for you guys. I think Simon put a little bit of thought here, but seems like the opportunity makes sense. Seems like space is growing. Seems like geopolitically it's important for America to be on top. Obviously, governmental contracts could play a huge role. What is the real bear case for Rocket Lab still being a $2 billion or maybe only $4 or $5 billion company by 2028?
Could be zero.
Or it could be zero. Yeah. How does it go bankrupt?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, it is a competitive space. I mean, if you look at it, truly, SpaceX almost did the same. You saw Virgin Orbit, you know, literally just announced 85% cut of folks. You saw Astra only really has a couple more quarters worth of runway left with the cash that they have on hand. And so if things don't go well for Neutron and things don't continue to do well from a continued I guess they don't get the sustainability of Neutron as expected, and they don't get the run rate from the space systems side that they were really truly expecting. I mean, technically you could, but go to zero. But I think they're well capitalized to get them to 2025, 2026. And I think that, you know, that's using today's burn rate, right, of 110 to 120 million dollars a year. I'm pretty confident that that burn rate will continue to go down as Cadence goes up, as the space systems continue to be more and more used. And so I anticipate that cash burn is really going to go down over time, and it might extend it out to 2026 or 2027, like Simon was kind of mentioning. So, but yeah, I did want to also announce that, you know, there are continuous additions, right? They just announced, I think in early March or late February, the partnership with Australia as well. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't really think about. This is something that spans 2 different launch pads, right? It spans in New Zealand, it spans into the west or eastern part of the United States and Wallops, Virginia. And so you have the ability to launch from New Zealand. You have the ability to now work with Australia as they're setting up that space system, which is going to be another profit center potentially, where they just set up Rocket Lab Australia. And that's not like a conflict of interest, because you have the United States, Great Britain, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, part of this similar space sort of consortium to look after each other, called the Five Eyes. And so that gives you 2 places to kind of launch from. And it's a small launch system as well. So potentially, they haven't really mentioned it, but Electron is rather small comparatively to some of these other rockets. You could set up launch systems elsewhere, potentially a 3rd launch site, which I think that they were discussing on the western side of the United States as well. So it's not the end. And I think that there's a long runway to go. And I think comparatively to some of the other people in the space, I think the upside potential is huge comparatively to what the downside risk is, but the risk is always it could go to zero.
Okay. Yeah, Simon, I just asked Matt what the bear case is on Rocket Labs if he had to give any.
So let me do a bear case, then let me do a bull case. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Bear case is Neutron. So the new rocket they're gonna try to get online. The bear case is that they were overly ambitious with that system, that they burned through too much cash, that they have to put that on hold. They have to wait to get the space systems to kind of get more cash on hand, and that we're looking at another 10, 15 years down the line to try to run towards profitability. I think they're still in a relatively good position to kind of survive that. And they have said that they could become operationally profitable quite quickly if they put the Neutron program on hold. The bull case is Elon Musk gets his colony on the Mars. There's a NASA gets the Artemis program set up on the moon. There's going to be no choice but to get a lot of solar panels, a lot of missions going back and forth. A lot of stuff is going to go up to space over the next 10 years. And I think that Rocket Lab, as the runner up right now for launch and as the leader for space system, is absolutely perfectly positioned for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now, we're sitting at a $100 billion company.
Okay. Not bad. This is very exciting. You guys have convinced me to think a little bit more deeply. We're not start a position yet because I got.
It's only $4.
It's like, no, that's true. It is only $4. You guys don't think it's a little richly valued at $2 billion and $4 stock, right? You don't think there's.
I'm happy where it's at right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my lowest market cap company, but it's my second place position. So
I think I agree with Simon. The risk versus reward to me is about comparable. I could see it, in success cases when things go right. I really see this easily going to a $50 billion, but my numbers mentally in the next 10, 15 years see this going to 100 billion. And you have to think that SpaceX, I think right now is at least 100 to 120 billion.
Yeah.
And they're
round the raising right now is at 160.
160.
Yeah.
So I think if you consider where SpaceX kind of got started, I think we're like 8. If you look at it direct numbers versus when they got their first launch versus when, I think we're like 8 or 9 years behind. And so if you want to look at it that way, granted, I think they're two completely separate businesses. I think we have more of a space system business comparatively to SpaceX, and SpaceX is more interplanetary and more has like a mission to Mars versus what we're kind of looking at, right? We're trying to be more of a service company. So it's not a like for like comparison, but if you wanted to kind of say, SpaceX was 160 billion, will Rocket Lab, I think you're going to be in the right ballpark, right? It's not going to be like for like. So I don't know if I'm talking.
The reason SpaceX is capitalized at that point is for the Starlink program, right? And the Starlink program was initialized to help Elon Musk achieve his mission of paying for the trip to Mars, right? Paying for the colony to Mars. They had to have a big revenue stream, big profit to be able to pay for that ticket, right? But very similar, there's a lot more applications that we haven't thought of. And I mean, again, the more sci-fi side of me says 3D printing in space, bioprinting in space, all that good stuff, right? So I think we're at the cusp of it, and over the next couple of years, I think we're going to see just more and more convergence happening. I think right now is a perfect time to start building a position in Rocket Lab. And I think it's going to remain around these prices at least for another year. I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's going to track sideways at least until they get Neutron up and running, because people are just unsure how to value that future growth, right? And that future risk. Yeah. You've got about 1 year to put a position. After that, I think it's going to start going up very quickly.
Yeah, I think you have several catalysts, right? So in the next 2 years or year, if you just want to say year timeout, you're going to see several competitors kind of close up shop. And then, like you said, it's time in 2024, 2025, I think you'll really start to see whether or not Neutron is a real capability. And I think another thing is just keep watching the Investor Day presentations. It seems like every time they have one, they release another link in the chain as to where they're truly going long term. And in the Investor Day presentation, they release a lot of information, and I recommend a lot of people, if they are interested, to take the, I have a video kind of going through all the slides, but if you just want to go at your own leisure, there's, it's on the website. It's the September 2022 investor presentation. They even hinted at potentially creating a human capable vehicle, very much like what Dragon is for SpaceX. They didn't announce it, but they said they're looking into it, right? So that's another piece of the chain that isn't incorporated into these revenue numbers that I shared, that Simon shared, that are in the Investor Day presentation. And it's that continuation of where is this going, right? It's that industrious and continuous and curious mindset that's over at Rocket Lab, that I think that somebody who thinks long term could potentially get in for a decent ride. But I agree with you, Simon. I think the $4 to $5 range is, maybe even down to $3 is really where we're going to be staying until you truly start to see some results go towards the upside.
Yeah. And I mean, Amit, I know you're the big Palantir guy. Their, I think, Black Sky acquisition.
Yep.
So Black Sky is one of Rocket Lab's big client.
Yeah, I think Black Sky got a $250 million contract to do some geospatial imagery
Correct.
and that some of that's Ukraine, Russia stuff as well. It's interesting. So that's why I wanted to do this podcast as well, because because of Black Sky, I was looking into the space starting like February 2022, but I just never had enough time to really go deep on it. But
I mean, there's a lot of things we didn't touch up on today. I mean, there's lots and lots of stuff we could go over.
Well, this is my Matt's been trying to do this Rocket Lab monthly or whatever every.
Matt, I'm down. Let's do it.
There's a lot to cover. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have a chance to invest in a company, like when we share the graphics and I'm seeing Earth, and I'm like, holy shit, we're living on that rock right now. And you've got this company that's really trying to make sure that that rock is protected and well prepared and suited over the next, because I mean, we're going to be dead in the next 100 years, but like Earth is not going to have an easy time over the next 1,000. I mean, there's a lot of shit coming. One asteroid took out the dinosaurs, and it's like, well, the dinosaurs weren't as smart as humans. And if they had a company like Rocket Lab or SpaceX potentially protecting them, maybe they'd still be around. And so it's very interesting to see how much we would be willing to pay to protect our planet and launch new things and get internet to 3 billion people that don't have the internet right now.
Will you be our Bruce Willis, Amit?
Once Palantir goes to the moon, then I can then I can focus to being on Bruce Willis. But it's just so exciting,
You can sing for me.
I can sing for you. Yes.
I kind of feel like Tesla in the early days, not from an investor community point of view, but when they were first kind of tinkering with AI and kind of saw the possibility in the future, I kind of feel that we're a really similar position right now. There's that community kind of slowly forming, getting exciting about it, but realistically, a couple years out, and I think Artemis or getting people back onto the moon, that's just going to kickstart a similar wave to what we're seeing with AI right now, or like we saw with crypto a couple of years ago, right? It's just kind of, we're a couple of years early right now, and it's the time to kind of slowly make moves. And I mean, by day, right now, I'm a freelance software engineer, and I'm just doing everything I can right now to kind of reposition myself and try to find where I can put some value in this space.
Would you ever want to apply to work for them, Simon?
No, couldn't hold the stock.
So, you couldn't hold that. Well, they would give you options, right? But you couldn't. Yeah. That's interesting. That's true. Okay, that's awesome. Super dope stuff. I want to thank Carlos, Simon, and Matt Money for taking the time. It's late at night on a Monday, getting their week started. So thank you guys for educating me about this. I'm sure we'll do probably more of these in the future. But yeah, excited to learn more about Rocket Labs. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Put them in the chat or put them in the comments, and these 3 guys will definitely be there to help answer any questions. And I think this podcast, if anything, warrants a deeper look into Rocket Lab and potentially a position going in the future. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for the time.
See you on the next one.